CogX. Welcome to day 2 of our sessions here on Lab to Live stage. My name is Ellie Armstrong and I'm going to be your MC for today. We're excited to welcome you back. We had 57,000 people watching the stream yesterday, so we're hoping to get some really high quality engagement today across the sessions that we're leading. So I'm going to hand over to our first speaker. This is Tania Saxl. Tania, please feel free to start our first session.
Hello, hi everybody. Welcome to our session. We're going to be having a case study here between AI from Satalia and sofa retailer DFS. My name's Tania Saxl. I'm the Chief Innovation Officer at Satalia. So I'm bringing on with me Youri Moskovic, Head of Services at Satalia, and Chris Allen, who is the Senior Technology Partner at DFS. Hi everyone.
Hello, hello.
Yeah, very much. All right, so I'm going to do a very quick intro before I hand over to Youri and Chris to give us our case study. I know that this is an AI conference, but I thought I would stick a line in the sand as to what we think AI actually is at Satalia. So if I could, can you put up the first slide, please? So a lot of you will be hearing a lot about machine learning at this conference. And I'd like to say that machine learning is really only just one part of artificial intelligence. With machine learning, we take data, we look around, we make observations, and we generate insight and predictions, which can be extremely useful for businesses. However, that's only part of the picture, and there really is the intelligent aspect is missing. So after we've drawn these inferences and made some predictions, that's all very interesting. It's useful insight for a business. But what's really important then is to say, what decision do we make following this insight? What are we going to do next? And then once we've made those decisions, how do we then adapt? So something that's truly intelligent will be able to support you and or make their own decisions and then adapt and change and evolve over time. Could have the next slide, thanks. So I was thinking about AI in retail specifically, and I'm having a little look around, and I found this nice slide actually from Capgemini. It's about a year old, and just got a very nice selection of lots of applications of machine learning and AI in retail. You can have a look at that at your own leisure. But one of the things that this is really missing is it's basically a list. So there's lots of lists across the value chain of retail of different types of applications of machine learning and different approaches in AI. That's something that's this hasn't quite captured is the full picture. And I hope that that's something that you would be able to get throughout our talk. So next slide, please. So what we're really missing from something like this, which is a collection of interesting applications, is the true full picture of a retail organization, the decisions that we make at every stage across the value chain, and how we would optimize these decisions so that you get the best outcome for your business. And then as we're making these decisions over time, intelligently, we would wish to adapt and change. Get the next slide, thanks. So I just picked out a few pieces from this particular list as they're quite nice. So I've circled the ones in pink that are the sort of optimized decisions that we would expect to make along the value chain. And I picked out in particular, here we've got Satalia Workforce in the in-store operations category. And that's what the focus of this case study is going to be. But then also a couple of things that you would see more traditionally is machine learning, such as demand forecasting or possibly churn prediction. And these are more insight and data sources that we would then use to feed into our decision-making structures. And then we would take those inputs and create decisions and or advice for a company to use. And then we would adapt and change these over time. The next slide, please. And if you look at the whole entire picture of, say, a company with its full pipeline from manufacturing through to the store floor, from marketing and sales, you would actually get quite a complex picture that covers the entire full length of the value chain. And we would convert this into something which we would call a digital twin, which I'm sure you're possibly hearing about in other aspects of the conference. So digital twin is a digital representation of all these processes and stages throughout the retail value chain. And what you can do, what the real magic of having a digital twin that covers this this entire full sort of range, is that you can then experiment on this, and you can look and you can change and make decisions and change inputs and put in different data sources. And you can do that virtually, and then you can apply that in store at a later date once you've done testing and you've looked to see what you could expect to get out. So a really beautiful way of looking at the whole picture is to have a digital twin. And we're lucky enough to have a wonderful relationship with DFS that we've grown over quite a long period of time, which has allowed us to work towards building a full digital twin of their entire organisation. So what we're actually going to talk today about is one aspect of this digital twin that we're building with them, and that is workforce, which is scheduling of their staff in stores. So I'm going to hand over at this point to Youri and Chris, who are going to talk a little bit further about our workforce solution. Youri.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks a lot, Tania. So just before I talk about the project itself, I just want to give a small overview of who Satalia is, and same thing about DFS. So Satalia, we do a few things. The first of which is we build end-to-end bespoke AI systems for large-scale companies through consultancy. And these systems can be more back-end operational oriented, like rostering staff, scheduling vehicles, planning infrastructure, or they can be also more customer oriented, like price optimization, churn analysis, and demand forecasting. And traditionally, the second thing that we do is whenever we identify a wider interest in the market for one of the solutions we've built with a client, we will go and productize that solution in order to actually bring it to that market. And this is what has happened with our delivery solution, which we've got, and our workforce solution, which we're going to talk about today. The third thing that we do is that we are applying these technologies also internally. So we do that to build a smarter and faster and more innovative company. We're about 100 people spread across Europe. We're completely decentralized. We don't have any managers, no KPIs, no concept of holiday restrictions. And I'm happy to answer some questions about this in the Q&A, because I know it's always a little bit new and unique. And so people work from wherever they want, when they want, and how they want, really. And DFS is a furniture retailer in the UK, but also in Spain, the Netherlands, in Ireland, and we specialize in sofa and soft furnishings. Quite an interesting stat that Chris shared with me yesterday is that the sofa market is £3.5 billion a year, and DFS owns 35% of that, which is quite significant. So I'm sure you've heard about them. They have about 230 stores and 5,500 employees. Chris, I don't know if you have anything to add, or if that's the full picture.
You sold it.
Yes. Great. Okay. So as Tania said, DFS and Satalia have a long-term relationship. We actually started working together to solve a delivery problem back in the day. So DFS used to arrange their delivery orders manually, which caused a number of problems, and we built a custom version of our delivery solution to tackle that problem. And that project literally opened up several doors to solve other business problems. And this is how the digital twin ambition was born. And it's through that vision, I guess, that the workforce project started.
Youri, I think the only thing to say is that DFS is a business, although we are predominantly a retail business, and that's what we recognise as. We actually are a business in terms of what Tania shared, whereas we have our own manufacturing facilities. We are the biggest manufacturer of sofas in Europe, along with the biggest retailer of products. We also deliver majority of our own product. So we have our own logistics operations, supply chain, warehousing, manufacturing facilities.
Yeah, thanks a lot for that. You see, you've sold it. better than I did. All right, so let's dive into the project. So I guess presenting a problem, the DFS at the time didn't have a very accurate overview of their future demand in stores. And that led to having difficulties to schedule staff accordingly. And this is a common problem that we see in a lot of retailers. They allocate a fixed number of employees in stores throughout a day, even though the demand is varying. So as the footfall increases, the conversion rate decreases. And so we can see here on that slide, we've got essentially the time of the day on the x-axis and the footfall and the conversion rate on the y-axis. And we can see that in green, the footfall actually increases throughout the middle of the day. And this is where in red, the conversion rate is actually decreasing. The reason why this is happening is because the actual number of employees that are allocated in the stores doesn't really change, as we can see the black dotted line. So we have too few employees at demanding times and too many employees at low demanding periods. I guess a second less obvious issue that we've identified with DFS is that they have a commission-based business. Now, that's not an issue in itself, but the employees with a lot of experience started to understand when the demand would be peaking in terms of days within the week. And so they could even show up on days that, on days that were very demanding, even though they were not allocated to make sales and actually make commission, which increases the competition between the staff. And this was something that we needed to address. I guess, just as a side note, allocating employees to work is actually an exponentially hard maths problem. And most companies, I guess, try to solve this manually. And so in this illustration, you can see you've got 5 Pokemons, but it could be 5 people that you need to allocate to 5 tasks. And you've got 120 different ways of doing that. If you add 10 people and end up with 15 people in total that you need to allocate to 15 different tasks, you've got 1.3 trillion different ways of doing that. So you can see it grows exponentially. And if you've got 500 employees, you've got more ways of allocating those people to tasks than there are atoms in the universe. So it's a huge problem. It's a very complex problem that we're trying to solve. And we're using essentially our platform and basically modifying our platform here at Satalia to adapt and solve 100% of our clients' problem. So for the solution, the objective of this project was, first of all, to increase conversion rate. And the second part of the project, the objective, was to create fair schedules. And what we mean by this is creating schedules that would allow every employee to have the same opportunity to make a sale and therefore earn a commission, no matter whether we are on Tuesday, which has a lower demand, or a Saturday, which has a higher demand. And we quickly understood that we couldn't optimize for an increase in conversion rate ourselves using mathematics and optimization as a whole, because this obviously depends on the employees themselves, the quality of their skills and how they're doing their job. But what we can optimize for is the alignment of supply and demand. And so the first part was to understand what the demand looked like and predict that. And the second part of it was to feed that information into a workforce optimization model that would take care of the staff allocation. So the tool that we built for DFS consists of 2 complementary models. We've got the first one, which is a demand forecasting model that predicts footfall hourly, 6 weeks in advance, and it's using historical data like footfall, sales, and also historical as well as future data like marketing spend, promotional calendar, and so forth. The second model is a workforce optimization model. It allocates staff to shifts that are based on the predicted demand as well as a set of business rules. So we're looking at the regulations of the business, like an employee cannot work more than 45 hours a week. But we're also, and very importantly, looking at the employees' information, their availability, of course, but their preferences, their skill sets, their position in the company, and also other stuff like the location of the stores. And I'm insisting on this because we are now living in a world where it is key to make business decisions based on your employee information. And DFS understands that extremely well. And we can see the impact that it has now. You know, while DFS shut down their stores, they are reopening them, and they're in a position to now take into account the skills of the employees, their preferences, in order to satisfy, you know, when someone needs to go and pick up their children from school, or where they need to take care of the children at home, which is extremely important from an employee satisfaction perspective. Another important part of the solution is that the whole system is automated. So it generates predictions and schedules 6 weeks in advance, and it updates itself every week, taking into account actual data from the week before. And this is very, very important. This is a concept called nowcasting. So it's the prediction of the present or the very near future based on the most recent events. And I'm saying this because whenever we're building these predictive systems, we need to be very cautious about trying to predict the future from historic data only. We need to build unique and adaptive demand models that rapidly react to a changing world. And so we are training our predictive model on the latest data as well as historical data to take into account the latest change in the environment and basically maximize the accuracy of our predictions, which in turn allows us to make the most optimized supply decisions. The predictions and the schedules are displayed on the user interface, which we've built on demand for DFS, and all of the informations captured are completely centralized. Everything is under the same roof. That means the predictions, the schedules, the employee information, and the store details. And they are accessible from any devices. That means computers, laptops, tablets, mobile devices, you name it. I guess that the reason we did that is to make the information available to anyone in the stores, that is the managers, as well as the employees, such that they could collectively make data-driven decisions. So the success of this project, in my opinion, and I think this is shared across the team, was partly due to the agile implementation approach. We started with a pilot, which itself started with an exploratory data analysis, during which we did three main things. We reviewed the availability and the quality of the data held by DFS. We carefully selected the data sets with the most predictive power. We determined the most appropriate machine learning methodologies to forecast the demand. And then we moved on to the next step, which was to build the initial models. So we built both the demand forecasting model and the optimization model in parallel. And the demand forecasting model, we started predicting the number of customers that will come in the stores daily. So that was quite at a quite aggregated level. And when DFS and Satalia were satisfied with the prediction accuracy, we then moved on to building more granular predictive models that is predicting at an hourly level. And then we used these predictions and transformed them to predict the number of employees required to serve the customers on an hourly basis. And that would be the input that we are now putting in our optimization model. And the optimization model, as I said, is basically a mathematical model that is the representation of DFS's business, taking into account the business rules and the employee informations. And in essentially introducing optimal shifts that meet the demand from the customers, and it's allocating the right employee at the right time. And as soon as we've developed these initial models, we tested them to understand whether they derived value for the business. And I think this is quite an important point to make, that most of the managers that are working at DFS in the stores have been working for DFS for quite a while, and they know their job extremely well. And so you can imagine coming into a store and saying to a manager, this is an automated scheduling system that you now need to use. They will feel a little bit reluctant to that change because it's too much all at once. So the testing actually was carried out in gradual stages. We first tested the forecasted footfall to gain trust and credibility amongst employees. That is, we gave the predictions to the managers and asked them if they would modify their schedules, their own schedules, the one that they made, knowing what future demand would look like. And they did. They looked at the predictions, they adapted their schedules, and we quickly understood that this could have a bigger impact once this would be introduced at scale. And we're going to talk about the results in a second. I'll let Chris talk about that in a minute. But what was interesting is that we first introduced, to go to market, to go to the stores with the prediction as fast as possible, we started introducing them on an Excel sheet. But then as soon as we understood the potential that this would have at scale, this is when we had some sort of like go ahead to build a user interface and to make it more appealing for the user. The rollout was, for the prediction, was also introduced in a phased way, meaning that we started testing our predictions with 4 stores. We then introduced them to 20, gathered some feedback, implemented that feedback, introduced it to 80 stores, and then 120, until we went up to like fully automating the predictions. In a similar way, for the optimization schedules, we also tested them on a very small number of stores, the same initial 4 stores, but we did that after testing the predictions, after we had the sort of like the trust and the credibility from the employees. Once they knew it would be useful to them, then we were in a good position to start introducing those schedules. And so we started by giving them the schedule and actually just asked the managers to compare the schedules that they put together against the data-driven one. And this is how we started collecting feedback. And we did that for a couple of months until we reached robust schedules in those 4 stores, and that schedules that DFS and Satalia were happy with. And in a similar way, with the predictions, with the optimization schedules, we tested them on those 4 stores, and then introduced them to 16, and then 30, and then we've now rolled out fully across their entire estate. And then we went from having just the predictions, having that on a user interface, to having a full workforce management system. So in terms of the benefits, I let Chris talk about this, but I guess the main thing that we see we can extract is that the benefits are threefold. We've got the company itself, so DFS, that are now benefiting from an automated workforce management system that increases their profitability. And then we've got the employees themselves that benefit from a fair schedule, one that is taking into account their preferences, that is consistent, and that takes into account their skill set. So they are only doing tasks that they are supposed to do. And same thing for the manager of the stores. They spend less time on admin, on things that takes quite a lot of time. It's quite tedious, and they now spend more time on more meaningful tasks for the business. And from a customer's perspective, this is obviously key. You've got an improved customer service. You have we've reduced the personal handover, and we're allocating essentially the right employee for the right job at the right time. Now I'll hand over to Chris to give his side of the
Yorkshire version.
Yeah, exactly.
Hi there, guys. So it's a difficult problem, and it's a problem I'm sure lots of businesses faced. And the thing that really that hammered it home for me at the beginning on the original slide on the graph is one that you don't necessarily think about, or that you don't understand the impact it has. But the big dip in that original slide was actually at 1 o'clock, when we have got the right employees there and we think we're doing the right thing, and then everybody goes for lunch. That's the thing that really said to me that we need to do something here, and we need to understand a bit better what's happening in the business and see that digitally. In terms of the system, I'll let Youri talk about models and mathematics. But for me, it's quite simple. If we know how many people are going to walk through the door at any one time, it should be very simple for us to align that capacity with that demand, and have those right people in those right places at that right time. And I think the thing that goes unsaid often, and it can have as much of a negative impact as not having enough people, is having too many. We've probably all walked into stores where you're the only shopper in the store, and there's 15 or 20 salespeople. That's also probably more so actually a negative experience, and we do see that actually customers spend less time in store when they're the only person in store than actually when the store's busy. They're more willing to wait. So I guess that's kind of an unmeasurable sort of soft measure or soft benefit. But in terms of really, the proof being in the pudding, as we say in Yorkshire, we do this work. We do try and get to add value early, and it is paying off. We have seen like-for-like sales at these stores increase. Interestingly enough, actually using less hours across the week, but using those hours in a more targeted way to align with that demand. So, we did see increases in store sales. We did see increases in conversion, and obviously as a retail business, that's fantastic, and that's great, and that's what the guys in finance love to see. But as well as that, at the same time, we're actually offering a more flexible environment to work in, a more understanding workforce, and a more agile workforce in terms of we can accommodate more. And I think in the world that we find ourselves in today, that's more and more important for people. I think the days of the shop is open till 8 p.m. we must have 5 people here because that's what we've always done, just doesn't work anymore. It doesn't work for people. It doesn't work for the business, and essentially it closes the market for recruiting the best people. We know, and we've proven that we can do a better job with less people at the right times, and everybody benefits. So really looking at the recruitment and the retention of people, the well-being of people, accommodating people's needs, and being able to do that in a very quick and agile way. It's made a massive difference to the colleagues, to the customers, and to the store. And I think what people forget is that there's a lot of things go into a store. There's a lot of responsibilities, and to try and accommodate all those responsibilities manually is very, very difficult. As we already said, I'll not cover it again. And then to align the footfall is just a task in itself that's obtainable. I think that's it really. We're going to run out of time, so we better move.
I actually, something I just want to show is that this shows basically when we tested our initial predictions in Leicester, this shows that we're now averaging 80% accuracy when we are basically comparing ourselves between our predictions and the actual. But the most important thing I just want to show here is to go back to your point with doing as well or even better with less people. Something we are playing with now is the optimization model itself. We've got many different rules, as I mentioned, one of which is the minimum working hours that needs obviously to be respected. So if we look at here on that particular slide, we can see that when we've got the minimum working hours rule in the optimization model switched on, we can see that the numbers of people recommended by our data science is much lower than what the optimization has scheduled. And this is because we are restricted to satisfy the minimum working hours, which is 40 for full-time employees and 24 for part-time employees. And when we are actually switching that rule off, we can see that we are respecting the requested number of employees in a much better way. So this means, and we can also see, comparing with the previous slide, sorry to go back and forth, but we are totaling almost 400 hours here. And for the same week, just by switching off one rule, we are reducing it to 275. So that means that with less people, we can do as well, if not better. And that doesn't mean that you need to replace those people. Not at all. What it means is you can park some of these hours and redeploy them on more demanding periods, which is obviously what the business wants to see.
I think the better phrase would be less hours. So often more people. This is not an exercise really in sort of cutting heads or anything like that. It's often more people, but in total less hours. And utilizing those people and deploying those people at the times when it is best for the business, but in a model is also best for them. If I can work 20 hours a week and earn the same as I used to earn working 30 hours a week, that's better for the business and it's better for the employee.
Yeah. And so I guess now that we've spoken about what we have done, as I said at the beginning, one solution unlocks many other opportunities. And to go back with our digital twin ambition, we now have multiple projects in the pipeline lined up so that we could actually keep going into that direction of building this digital twin. We're now in a very good position with DFS to look into what consists of an optimal workforce for them. And we are looking at it from a company perspective, but we can also go a little bit more granular and look from a location perspective. So for each store, what consists of the best, the most optimal workforce. A second thing that we are looking at is the demand predictions, but instead of doing it from a footfall perspective, it's looking at it from a sales and SKU perspective. Because obviously the retail business starts with the sales, so the demand. And if we are in a position to really understand in advance what the future demand looks like, what the future sales are, this has a very positive effect for the business, because you can then plan ahead everything going from the manufacturing, the delivering of the products. So everything that takes into account the customer service and the supply chain. So I don't know if you have anything to add to that, Chris, but this, I guess, is the final things.
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple of things. So I think reusability and being able to take what you've found or what you've derived for a specific purpose and use that elsewhere is massively important to us as a business and allows us to move a lot faster. So yeah, it's entirely right that we tried to predict demand to align our workforce model with the demand, but that demand prediction is now being reused and utilized in other areas of the business. We drop that into we have a data lake at DFS, and we drop that in, and it can be used by other businesses as well as by internal users, you know, to inform other predictions. So we're taking a prediction to inform a prediction. And I guess the other thing is, in terms of the digital twin, you know, it's very important for us, if we're taking all these inputs like marketing, as a business, it's very expensive to test marketing theories in the real world. You know, if you spent an extra £1 million on social media marketing, what does that do? Well, the fact that we are now predicting demand to a level above 80% based on those inputs allows us to become a little bit more understanding of, in the digital world and in the digital twin, we can change those inputs. We can change that marketing input artificially and see what impact that's potentially will have on the footfall. I mean, obviously, you know, until you do it, you don't know, but we are very confident in the inputs that we've got and the changes to those inputs having quite a reliable effect on the footfall that may be predicted in the future. And I think as a business, for us, that could be massively powerful for us in the future. You know, it's early days and we have to do things in turn, but essentially that's the beginning of that digital twin. You know, we like to think of things in the customer's eyes, really, in terms of the customer journey. And the customer being attracted to the business through marketing and advertising into the store and being seen by somebody who's available to see them, all the way to manufacturing the sofa, predicting the inbound and when that sofa is going to arrive to our business, and then, as Youri said at the beginning, to then schedule that the delivery of that sofa to the customer as optimally as possible. And all that is digital and all that is available within our data lake. It's really now about connecting those dots and understanding that journey, and then it becomes very simple then, once those dots are connected, to say, okay, well, if we do tweak marketing over here, what does that do to deliveries over here? And what we want to end up in is a situation where, or we don't want to end up in, is a situation where businesses find themselves, it's great to spend more money on marketing, and it's great if that works. But if that works too well, you could cause a problem downstream of that decision. And we want to see that problem before we try and make a decision that hopefully, you know, helps alleviate the problem, if not solve it. You know, and sometimes those decisions need to be made years in advance. You know, if it's opening a new distribution center, or if it's, you know, vans and staff to cater for the new demand that's being created. It's an interesting problem, and we've got some partners that understand that problem perfectly well.
Thanks for that, Chris. I guess as a final note, because we're coming close to the end, just want to say that we've been very lucky enough to partner with DFS on this one and basically build our solution from the ground up. And we are now in a position, as I said at the beginning, one of the things that we do is we productize those solutions. So we're now in a position to take that solution to market. We are actually taking it to market. We've built the engines and the platforms necessary to be able to, you know, minimize time to value and essentially implement that as fast as possible for a new client. I guess thanks a lot for listening. Thanks a lot for all the questions. We're going to address those in the Q&A. And to finish, we're going to show you a small video. It's kind of like a small testimonial from the DFS themselves, one of the managers and his team.
Well, I received a call from Jim Pace and a visit, and he asked me to look at workforce management. Gave me some figures which he got from Satalia. I took them home and spent 3 days looking through them, trying to work out the rotas to make it fit, and there were some challenges in there. because of the workforce we've got, pretty fixed and inflexible, either working a 9-6, 11-8 in every weekend and doing a set period of late nights. We've been able to recruit part-time staff or key-time staff. We've mixed up the age group, so I've got people from the ages of 18 who have come through the apprentice scheme, and we've obviously got a very diverse community in Leicester. We've got one guy who's 66 who's still working for us, and he's a key-time worker as well. Very effective in the business. I think the scheduling tool has helped us focus on conversion really, and the customer we've got when they're coming in. It's also helped adjusting the hours to suit the business really, and the business needs, which has been a bonus for the staff, in that they've been able to adjust their hours and maximise the business. We've also been able to work on such things as lunch hours and breaks and make it more effective.
What made me join DFS was the fact that it's much more of a fast-paced environment. The company itself is very rewarding and it fits around my lifestyle. So I personally go uni, so I'm a part-time student. I do 18 hours a week. That hours fits into my lifestyle.
With us normally finishing at, say, 8 o'clock, sometimes it can be hard to do things after you finish work, but with leaving early, I'm able to have more of a social life. With having the part-timers at the key times, we've noticed that more customers are being seen to, and we can help more customers find the sofa that is right for them.
Well, I think we've overcome some challenges. We've recruited some key time staff, which is a challenge in itself, as you realise you want to get the right people to do the job, and it's worth investing in the time in the interviews and investing time in training them. It looks good at the moment, it's going to look better. We've got a couple more to recruit, and I see that strengthening the team and the business, and we'll all benefit from it.
All right, well, I'd like to thank our wonderful contributors from DFS and Satalia, and we're going to take a short break now until 11 o'clock when we'll be back for the Q&A. We've seen some really great questions come through the Q&A, so please make sure you join us to hear the answers to those questions. Just a reminder for you to get back to the Q&A session, please go to your festival app or log in through the browser. You want to go to Agenda and then under Tracks, choose Q&A. And there you'll find the same title for this session. The Satalia is using AI to optimize store performance for DFS, Q&A, and that's where you want to be able to join us to be able to see those answers to those questions. So feel free to go and grab a drink, a temporally appropriate beverage, maybe a coffee or some water, and we'll see you back at 11 a.m. Thank you so much.
Want access to more CogX videos? Subscribe now for free at cogx.co.